Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you another guides, tips, and tricks video, and this time we're talking about Pantheons in Civilization 6, so let's get right to it. So, let's take a look at what we have available, using Russia because it's just the quickest way I can think of to get to a Pantheon, so let's go through it. So why Pantheons and why not including this in a general religion guide? Because I want to break this down very separately because I think they're very different things. Pantheons are supposedly, generally, at least in my experience, about getting yourself as much as an advantage in the early game as you can. Sometimes that will be about investing in a later game religion, but a lot of times it isn't. A lot of times you're going to want a Pantheon regardless of the civ you're playing, and you're pretty early in the game to get that bonuses, because you will get this bonus in all of your cities for the rest of the game, even if you get converted to another religion. And that is a new mechanic in Civ 6 that's not there in Civ 5. You never lose your Pantheon once you have it. So getting a Pantheon early, Pantheons are competitive too, so this list will get smaller as people pick Pantheons out of this list, and you might want to rush for a Pantheon depending on your circumstances. And we're going to talk through which Pantheons are really strong, in my opinion, which ones aren't, which ones are situationally strong, and which situations those are going to be. But I think this is a very different category than religion as a whole, because religion in this game is fairly weak, but the Pantheons are still decent to okay, and probably worth putting some resources into in a way that the religion really isn't most of the time. So with that said, the cost of you can see the cost of your Pantheon up here before you get one. The fact that we have one now means that that's no longer available, but you can see how much you have there. The best ways to get Pantheons are to find a tribal village right off the bat. On most game speeds, that's enough faith for Pantheon, although some game speeds it's not. At least on the faster game speeds it is on online speed for sure. But that will get you a big chunk of the way there, even if you're on a slower game speed. It's really good to meet a faith city-state at first, which means you get 2 faith per turn from them, which is also very strong. And then there are early game social policy cards called God King that gives you 1 faith per turn as well. Finally, you could build, we teched for it in this game, we built our unique holy site district, and the unique holy site district gives you faith per turn based on where you placed it. And then finally you can run holy site prayers, which are another way to increase temporarily faith and or great prophet points. Now, great prophet points are different mechanics. Great prophet points have nothing to do with getting your Pantheon. It's only faith that gets you your Pantheon to begin with. All right. And that said, did you guys notice how many? Oh, and relics. You can get a relic out of a goody hut too, and the relic gives you faith per turn. But those are all random. If you find a goody hut with faith in it, that's random. If you find a goody hut with a relic in it, that's random. If you meet a city state first, with gives you faith per turn, that's random. And those are the biggest. Those modifiers are something like plus 20 faith, plus 2 faith per turn, and I can't remember what a relic is per turn. Actually, I think I got one this game, so I guess we could check. 4 faith per turn off of a relic, which means that all of those things are massively bigger than the one you actually have control over, which is the card, which is 1 faith per turn, or rushing a very early holy site, which is probably in all likelihood going to be 1 or 2 faith per turn. Ours is currently giving us 2 because we have the forest adjacency plus the mountain adjacency bonuses. But in general, what that means is Pantheons are a bit of an RNG fest. It's a little bit of luck involved in getting a Pantheon early compared to other players getting it early. Even if you really want a Pantheon, you still might not get it earlier than other players are going to do because they've just run into some lucky coincidence to do that. But anyways, let's break down the Pantheons that are there. Holy Site Districts gain +1 faith from adjacent tundra tiles. This is not a very good bonus for lots of reasons. First of all, tundra is a fairly unpleasant area to expand into, so you tend, and well, there's a lot of levels on this. Let's maybe break it down one a little bit different first. To get your religion, which is one of the things you can do with faith, and one of the things you might consider getting stronger with your Pantheon, giving you a better chance to get a religion, that is not based on faith. Or not directly anyways, it's based on great prophet points. And so really you want to accumulate great prophet points to get a prophet sooner, so you get a religion out sooner. Now that said, you can purchase great people, and you purchase great people the cost of the great person is based on how many points you are. So as I get closer to, like if I was at 29 of 30, this would cost me way less faith. Proportionally way less faith. So having some faith income does mean you'll get your profit sooner if you want to use that faith to purchase the profit when it gets close. So that's not to say that faith isn't useless in generating great profits. It can be useful, but it's not directly useful in the same sense that a great profit point is useful. All right. So why is this one not so good? Mostly because a bonus like this means that if you're gonna get a faith bonus from holy sites, where you're gonna go out of your way to say +1 faith on my holy sites from tundra tiles, it means you're gonna want to settle a lot of cities with holy sites, because you're gonna clearly trying to do something with religion, and you're gonna want to settle a lot of cities that get this bonus, and this bonus is settling in tundra, and tundra is fairly crap. I don't think this pantheon is going to be very popular. I think this will be situationally popular with a civilization like Russia, that already has bonuses from tundra, so now has another bonus from tundra, and actually is going to be useful to them. Pretty weak pantheon overall. Desert folklore, holy sites gain +1 faith from adjacent desert tiles. Same problem here, except there's not even a civ that can really take care of that can really utilize desert in the same way that Russia utilizes tundra. This is going to be a very, very weak one again. Maybe you will have 1 or 2 cities near desert, but in general, only one of those cities can get Petra. So even if you get awesome Petra, only one city is really going to get the benefit from adjacency bonuses with their holy site, and it's just not a very strong bonus as a whole. It doesn't help you much in the early game. It's predicated on you doing something that requires a lot of faith in the mid and late game when you get more cities out, and actually being able to take advantage of this pantheon. And this is not a pantheon that is very easy to take advantage of. Sacred Site is a little bit easier to use in either Dance of the Aurora or Desert Folklore. Again, it's +1 faith from adjacent rainforest tiles for your holy site districts. There are a couple civs now with jungle start biases, and if you have some sort of religious strategy in mind, this seems a little bit more able to be spammed. You're likely to have a lot of cities in that type of area. I've seen some very dense jungles and forests in these games, and jungle and forest is less useless than tundra or desert to start with. The tiles are actually pretty decent. Hill jungle is 2-2. Banana jungle 3-1, banana hill jungle 3-2, etc. You get the idea. There's tiles that are actually really useful to be worked in there, which means that you might actually want to settle cities near them. So this is going to be a better bonus than these other two for that reason. River Goddess, +1 amenity to cities if they have a holy site district adjacent to a river. You don't tend to build a lot of holy sites unless you're going a religious-oriented strategy, and most of the time you don't tend to do religious-oriented strategies. So just better districts to be building in the early game. Things like commerce hubs are really powerful, industrial hubs are really powerful, campuses are necessary, and later on things like harbors, if you can do them, are good. Holy sites tend to be one of the lowest priority, if not the lowest priority district in the game right now, because religion isn't all that strong. Now, there are exceptions. If you're doing a religious victory or doing some sort of faith purchasing strategy, of course, that's going to be more useful. But in general, you're not building a lot of holy sites. So +1 amenity to cities if they have a holy site district adjacent to a river. River tiles are also the kind of most valued tiles out there right now. You settle on river tiles because you want the housing bonus that takes up some of the river tiles in your city. You tend to want to build commercial hubs on river tiles because they give plus gold. You tend to want to build other districts on river tiles like aqueducts, because aqueduct has to be adjacent to the capital and often has to be adjacent to a river tile too, depending on how you've laid out your city. And building other districts on those river tiles because you already have a city district and other districts like the aqueduct and the commercial hub on there. You tend to cluster your districts to get as many adjacency bonuses as possible. This is competing with the same problem there, which is that those tiles are already pretty high value tiles. You don't always want to waste another one of those tiles on a holy site district. That said, +1 amenity isn't terrible, and this would be essentially +1 amenity per city, especially in a civilization that is somehow going to take advantage of faith. This isn't terrible, but again, it's pretty situational, and it requires that you're going to be doing something where you want to invest in holy sites despite the opportunity cost of not building other districts at that time. I don't like this bonus, but it's there and it's not terrible. Monument to the Gods, 15% production towards ancient and classical era wonders. It's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. You need a pretty specific strategy to do this if you really wanted to take advantage of this. Early game wonders aren't all that great, but Petra is pretty damn good, and that is a classical era wonder. So perhaps if you're rushing Petra in some sort of city and you really, really think that's going to be game-changing and hugely impactful, you may wish to spend a Pantheon. Problem with this Pantheon is it's useless after the classical era, and a lot of times it's not that useful anyways, and then most of the time it's only going to be useful in your capital because most of the times you're not building wonders in your expands, especially in the early game. I don't really like this bonus. And 15% really isn't that much, but it's not useless. It's just very highly situational. Divine Spark, one great person point from holy site profit. One great person point from the holy site, the campus, or the theater square, and it gives you either prophet, a scientist, or a writer point for those. I don't like this very much. Certainly the one great person point from campuses would be nice, but this bonus, to maximize this bonus, you need all of these districts up. When you're founding Pantheons, you're not going to have any of these districts up in all likelihood. It will get you a profit sooner if you build a holy site district, but building a holy site district, especially very, very early, has a very high opportunity cost associated with it. If you're building that, you're not building other things like settlers and builders and, you know, military units and that type of stuff. And I don't actually think holy sites are very good as a whole. I think this is one of the weakest Pantheons out there right now. Lady of the Reeds and Marsh is situationally very good. +1 production from Marsh, Oasis, and Floodplain. In particular, Floodplain is amazing here. You tend to see a lot of floodplains in a row when you do get floodplains, and floodplains are a 3-0 tile to start with. Making them a 3-1 tile that also can have a farm put on them is a really strong tile in the early game. This is clearly going to be based on the land you get, but I like it when I do get it. I do find this very nice when I have the land to support it. God of the Sea. In the base unmodded game, fishing resources are absolutely terrible. Crabs are garbage. Fish are garbage. There doesn't seem to be a lot of sea luxuries. I don't tend to want to settle near the coast anyways, so I get less housing. +1 production for fishing boats does mean that you'll actually be able to work that tile without feeling extremely sad for the entire time you're working that, because now there's actually a little bit of production on the tile, and it's kind of worth doing it. But man, you have to have a lot of sea resources or be in a pretty sad spot where this is your best pick. Now in the mod, it's changed a little bit. Sea resources are a little bit better. This makes existing good sea resources even better, so it's a little bit more high priority there. But in the base unmodded game, this is okay, but it's like desperately okay. Like, God, I have to have something that helps me here because I have all these shitty crab tiles. Well, maybe God of the Sea is your pick to deal with that. God of the Open Sky is probably the best Pantheon in the game right now. It is applied super early when the culture matters the most. So you rush a Pantheon, hopefully from finding something lucky and getting it super soon. You already want to improve pastures. Pastures have very high values of food and production, which are the tiles you want to be working. Adding culture to that is really good. Culture is probably the third most valuable resource anyways. If you look at production first, food second, culture is probably the third most valuable resource. So it's a very high value yield that gets attached to a tile you're already wanting to work in the early game. +1 or +2 or +3 culture from improving your pastures is a huge amount of culture. If you think about it right now, I mean, what are we making on what pop are we? We're pop 3. We're making, and we have a monument. We're making 4 culture. Imagine if we added 3 culture to that from our Pantheon. We're almost doubling our culture, and this is post monument. You don't often build monuments this early. That's a ton of culture to be added. Definitely the best one now. And but of course it is. You know, all Pantheons are dependent on the terrain you have. This is dependent on having pastures in your capital or in the areas you're going to be working very soon. But if you do, this is amazingly good. Goddess of the Hunt, a little bit less good. +1 food from camps. There doesn't seem to be quite as many camps as there are pastures. The camps are a little bit less great to work, although camps on hills are quite nice. Things like ivory or furs on hills, wooded hills in particular, are quite nice. This is okay. It's not great. I think it's much worse than Open Sky just because of the prevalence and utility of pastures as opposed to camps. But you might find a couple capitals or a couple empires where this is useful. Stone Circles is situationally good. Clearly you're going to need quarries for it to be decent at all, but a lot of times faith generation just isn't very meaningful for you, especially in the early game where you'd rather have some sort of production or culture bonus. However, if you are thinking of some sort of religious strategy, 2 faith return from quarries from a very early tile improvement that you'll likely be working for a large portion of the game isn't too bad. Now, in the base game, if you're on any of the faster speeds, it's better to harvest stone than it is to actually improve it. So you may want to consider what version of a mod you're using, if you're using any versions of the mod, of any mods at all, and what game speed you're on. Because in the higher game speeds, it's better to harvest, and you're not going to want to use, not going to want to work stone. You'd rather just chop it for the immediate production boost. However, if you're playing on a modded game or slower game speed, and the faith might actually be valuable to you for some reason, this is a decent one if you have a couple quarries in your area. Religious idols, +1 faith from mines over luxuries and bonus resources. This is terrible. This is truly terrible. As we've said, raw faith alone really isn't that great, and this is not much raw faith, and that requires really specific tiles. Mines over luxuries and bonus resources are not that many. You're not going to have a lot of those. Luxury resource mines are things like salt, things like, I'm trying to even think of another one right now. there are other there are other luxuries that require mining, but there's not too many of them, and you're not going to get a ton of them. So probably you're looking at 1 to 2 faith in your capital from this. And mines over bonus resources are also pretty rare. The only one that's coming to mind right now for a bonus resource mine is copper. Copper is a decent tile a lot of the time, but you don't seem to get a lot of them. I suppose you could have some crazy capital that had like 10 of each of these, but probably you're not going to, and this just tends not to be a very big bonus at all. +1 faith for each of these for a rare occurring bonus is pretty minor. God of Craftsman, +1 production from mines over strategic resources. I think the only mines over strategic resources that are there are iron and then maybe niter later, and maybe coal later. But this is, you should think of Pantheons as like, you really want a very powerful early game bonus from a Pantheon, and you don't really care in the very late game how it helps. You want something that helps you now and helps you a lot now. And this is never going to help you a lot now, because you're never going to have something like 5 iron, right? You might have 1 if you're very lucky, 2 iron. So this is only ever going to be 2 hammers and you know, maybe 3 or 4 across an empire, because you might have 3 or 4 iron nodes, but even that's pretty damn rare. This is a pretty weak Pantheon, one of maybe the weakest in there right now. Goddess of Festivals. I don't love Goddess of Festivals. This is +1 food from wine, incense, cocoa, tobacco, coffee, and tea. I don't love these tiles in general. The yields on these tend to have a lot of gold, not a lot of production. It does depend on what they spawn on. So certainly if they have a forest or a hill underneath them, that changes a little bit, makes them a little bit better. +1 food on a tile you're going to work already is good. So it really is going to depend on how those luxuries have spawned near you. If they spawn a lot, okay, it makes it better. Clearly, that's a given with all the Pantheons. But if they spawn on the right type of terrain, that's even more of a useful thing. I tend not to pick this still because I just don't think that 1 food is all that valuable, especially in the very, very early game where I have other good tiles I want to work that don't include these. And they require the tile to be improved. So I have to get irrigation to get any of the plantations up, and I often don't rush irrigation, especially in the very early game. I often might be doing something like animal husbandry as a rush, because that's the first thing I want to improve on my pastures, but I might wait a little bit to get irrigation online, so it might be a little bit slower. That said, I actually quite like oral tradition. Oral tradition gives me the culture, and I don't know if this means mentally that I am lying to myself a little bit. Perhaps I actually value production culture food mentally. I know that you need a mix of food and production to actually do anything in the early game to grow your cities to a point where they can produce enough to do things. But early culture is really nice too, to get those social policies, those civics cards rolling out. This one always feels a little bit better to me, and it may be the base resources are just better. Banana tends to be a pretty solid tile. It's at the worst bananas are 3-1, 3 food, 1 hammer, and the best bananas are 3 food, 2 hammers, which is amazing. Adding +1 culture to a tile that I always want to work is quite nice. Citrus are very high growth tiles, often 4-1 tiles or things like that, which are quite nice as well. And spices are the best tile in the game right now to start with. This is the new salt of Civ 6 is spices, because your spice, if you have forest hill spices, you can get, I think, a 4-2 tile to start with, 4 food and 2 hammers right at the start, and adding +1 culture to that is awesome. So yeah, it has the same downside. It requires plantations, but I think in general I value oral tradition as a really good one if you have enough of these resources around to actually utilize it. One of the better ones, in fact. God of the Forge, one of the top tier go-to just picks if you don't have any really clear resources in your capital or in your initial area to tell you which one to pick up. God of the Forge is hard to go wrong with this. 25% production towards ancient classical era military units. This includes all of them, including horsemen, including heavy chariots, including archers, etc. It's very, very useful if you want to kill barbarians, if you're going to rush a player, if you're thinking you're going to get rushed. It's just a nice one that doesn't scale in the late game, because once classical's done, you don't get any more benefit towards this. But sometimes those, as I was saying with Pantheons, right? The sooner you get the bonus and the bigger the bonus is, the more impactful it's going to be. And this tends to be quite a large bonus that's very, very useful in the early game. I think it's a very, very powerful one of the top couple Pantheons for sure. Initiation rites, this is totally crap. This is 50 faith for every barbarian outpost cleared. You're probably not clearing in the early game more than 2 or 3 barbarian outposts, and that's a high number to be cleared. And 50 faith just really isn't all that much. Again, if you're taking a Pantheon that's gonna give you faith, you generally want a, if you're saying I really want a faith-based game and I'm gonna have a faith-based Pantheon to help me in my faith-based game, well, you probably want a Pantheon that gives you faith throughout the course of the game, and this is gonna taper off. Barbarian outposts do not spawn where you have sites, so as you expand more and your opponents expand more, and city-states spread out a little bit more, there's less spots where barbarians are going to spawn. and you're going to get less camps just from that. So the longer the game goes on, the less camps you're going to get, and the less of a bonus you're going to get from this, and it's just not a consistent source of faith. And if you're picking only a Pantheon, the only thing it does is give you faith, you want it consistent and a lot of faith, and this isn't going to do that. This is a terrible Pantheon. God of Healing, increased healing by +30 in your Holy Site district or any adjacent tiles. I've never used this. I don't see much of a reason for it. I guess if you were being warred and there's a situation where like it's a close game and like you're maybe about to lose your city, but you have like a melee unit who's holding strong and he's barely surviving every round of attack, and for some reason he happens to be near a holy site. But man, we're starting to get pretty specific. I suppose this could be a little bit useful if you are defending against swarms of other missionaries or inquisitors, or excuse me, not inquisitors, missionaries or apostles from an opponent, and you're like, I just need my apostles to heal faster so I can keep fighting. Maybe that would be useful, but at the moment it feels very, very weak to me. I don't think very much of God of Healing at all. God of War. Bonus faith equal to 50% of the strength of each enemy unit killed within 8 tiles of a holy site district you own. I've had some weird interactions with this. If you watch my game with the Roomba when we were playing Samaria and Scythia, I did take this Pantheon to check it out, and I found that it seems to be 8 tiles of... I was getting some weird things. It didn't actually seem to always be my holy sites that I was getting it. It just seemed to be if I was within 8 tiles of any holy site district, I seemed to be getting the faith bonus, which is strange and clearly not intended, but seems to be how it's working right now. This is okay if you're expecting a lot of war near cities that you own and are planning to continually build holy site districts, I guess. Again, you want a consistent source of faith. If you're going a faith-based Pantheon, you want a Pantheon that actually gives you faith, if that's what you care about. And this seems to be very inconsistent. You may get a little bit of faith early from barbarians, and I love when I kill a unit getting a pop-up for something like, yes, I got gold, or yes, I got culture, or yes, I got faith. That's awesome, but I don't feel like it's very consistent. I think it's better in initiation rites and better in God of Healing, but I don't know if I have a lot more to say about that in terms of positive things. Maybe we'll find some use where this is really good. Maybe if I do some sort of like Japanese-based faith purchasing strategy where I'm planning on warring people with units, and maybe this would be useful, but it feels extremely situationally useful again. Fertility rites, this is an easy pick if you have nothing else to go to. Same with religious settlements. These are both just passive bonuses for all your empires. City growth rate is 10% higher, that's cool, and border expansion 15% higher is also cool. Neither of these are... This is again kind of what I expect from a Pantheon that you might be tempted to pick in the early game. This is a bonus that's going to help you regardless of anything around you, and it's going to help you for the rest of the game, and it's not really based on anything to do with the religion. It's just what helps me now and how much does it help me now. You may notice that these, I don't think very highly of most of the Pantheons in the game right now. I think that in general, religion is weaker in Civ 6 than it was in Civ 5, and I think Pantheons in particular are much weaker in Civ 6 than they are in Civ 5, with a couple notable exceptions. God of the Open Sky, God of the Forge in particular stick out, and maybe Oral Tradition a little bit. But in general, my thought process for what I want to do with Pantheon is something that helps me early. If it helps me throughout the game, great, but mostly I care about the most amount of help I can get immediately for that. And except in some rare scenarios where I'm doing religious-based strategies, mostly I'm like, I don't care if it gives me anything faith-related. I want it to give me production, culture, food, combat strength, whatever, in the early game that's going to help me. Anyways, guys, hopefully you found this useful. I will be doing some religious guide videos at some point talking about the various religious breakdowns, but for this one, I just wanted to focus specifically on Pantheons. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button here on YouTube, or check me out on Twitch and come follow me there. I'm making a lot of Civ 6 content. Come check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.